Today we're back to look at some more Indomitus datasheets. We're looking at the Skorpekh Destroyers and the Skorpekh Lord. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we've been looking at the 9th edition news and rumours as they've been coming out. We've also been going through the Indomitus datasheets one by one and seeing how these new units might impact the Necrons and the Space Marines alike. Today we're looking at two of the poster boy new units for the Necrons, the Skorpekh Lords and Destroyers, who featured heavily in Games Workshop's animated trailer recently. We'll take a look at the Destroyers first, then move on to the Lord, and talk a little bit about their stat line and damage profiles, and maybe theorise a bit about how they'll fit in a Necron list when we have the full codex. So the Skorpekh Destroyers are an elite choice for Codex Necrons. They are 6 power level, and their rumoured points costs are 40 points per model and 15 points for the plasma side, though I don't have absolute confirmation on that yet. I will be going with that for the duration of the video though. It certainly seems about right based on the ability of the models, and it pretty much fits with their power level. In the unit you get 3 Skorpekh Destroyers, no more and no less at this point. They have a fairly hefty stat line, with a scuttly movement of 8 inches, weapon skill and ballistic skill 3, strength and toughness of 5, 3 wounds, 3 attacks, leadership 10 and a 3+ save. They have no invul save or anything, but do get the reanimation protocols as is pretty standard for the Necrons. You can also opt to include 1 plasma site in the unit, which you mainly do for its special rule to soup up their close combat attacks. That one also has a movement of 8, its only weapon skill and ballistic skill 4+, strength 4, toughness 5, 1 wound, 1 attack, leadership 10 and a 4+ save. In terms of war gear, one Skorpekh Destroyer is armed with a Hyperphase Reap Blade, as we've already seen previewed, and the others are equipped with Hyperphase Threshers. The plasma side is equipped only with a monomolecular proboscis. Overall, I think their stat line's fairly impressive, basically very similar to Primaris Aggressors in terms of defensive abilities, and as per the new points cost in 9th edition, they are going to be a bit cheaper than those guys. I'm glad they've got a little bit of extra movement compared with more standard infantry. 8 inches will certainly get them towards the opponent's face a lot faster, and strength 5 with 3 attacks is pretty decent for damage dealing. Talking of damage dealing, we've already seen that Hyperphase Reap Blade. It's strength +2, AP -4 and damage 3, so a strength 7 weapon in the hands of one Skorpekh Destroyer, and the others are armed with the Hyperphase Threshers, which we now know are strength user, so strength 5, AP -3 and damage 2. If you're armed with the Threshers, you can make 1 additional attack with the same weapon, so the Thresher guys will be having 4 attacks rather than the standard 3 for the guy with the Reap Blade. The monomolecular proboscis of the plasma side only is strength user, AP -1 and damage 1, so it's really not going to be contributing to damage output in any meaningful way. In terms of special rules, they have the standard reanimation protocols. They've got the hardwired for destruction special rule, similar for regular destroyers, which means they reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by models in the unit, so they kind of self-buff a bit in terms of damage dealing potential. The plasma side has this infused madness ability. Basically at the start of the fight phase, if this unit contains a plasma side, then it can inject tainted energy. If it does, you roll a d6, and on a 1, one Skorpekh Destroyer model in the unit is destroyed. In any case, until the end of the phase, add 1 to the strength and attacks characteristics of Skorpekh Destroyers models in the unit. Now I'm a bit on the fence with this one. It really is a pretty decent buff to their combat damage output, particularly if there's 3 of them. Going up to 4 attacks with the Reap Blade and 5 for the Threshers is powerful, plus getting that Reap Blade to strength 8 is pretty meaningful. Acquiring strength 6 with the Threshers is a bit less meaningful, but it kind of depends what you're fighting. If it's something that's toughness 5 or toughness 3, then that could be very good indeed. What makes me nervous is the fact that if you roll a 1 then you lose an entire destroyer, and at 40 points a model that's really not something that you want to be doing. Particularly so now that command reroll stratagem has been changed, so this no longer allows you to reroll if it happens to go wrong. In terms of damage output of the full unit on the charge, if the plasma side isn't buffing the unit, then they'll still on average kill 5 intercessors or 6 Imperial Guardsmen, or deal around 7 damage to a toughness 7 vehicle, half of that coming from that mighty Reap Blade. So basically these guys are going to be bad news to anything they catch up with. They've got decent strength, many attacks, and multi-damage. I think the plasma site might be worth it in some situations, particularly if someone directs a las cannon at this unit. You could potentially catch that first really high power, high damage shot on the plasma site, and then you've only lost 15 points rather than an entire 40 point Skorpekh Destroyer, which could be a positive even if it doesn't do anything else and just dies then and there. I do think that killing a destroyer is a big risk. Sometimes it is going to be worth that injection, sometimes perhaps not. I guess it does deal its own tiny bit of damage output on top of that. I feel that if we do get an expanded datasheet for this unit once they get a full multi-part plastic kit, as seems likely, then I think that the plasma site could come into more effect, as you're more likely to take the risk of killing a destroyer. If you're buffing a really quite big unit of them, or with the extra strength and attacks, you're just going to get more damage output out of them. In the keywords, they do get the standard Destroyer Cult keyword, which could be good for interactions with stratagems when they get the new codex. and also allows them to get rerolls for the Skorpekh Lord, which we'll come on to. We are about to acquire some new dynasties in the Necron Codex, but until then Novok seems a pretty reasonable shout on them. Getting extra rerolls isn't a bad thing at all. Overall, they seem like very decent damage output for the points. They're perhaps just a touch fragile, seeing as they will have to actually weather the storm to be able to get into close combat in the first place. On the base of it, they seem fairly well pointed, nothing absolutely overpowered or outstanding, but a solid new choice. If we look at the Skorpekh Lord next, he's a 7 power HQ choice for Codex Necrons, and is very much the boss for these guys. In the background, he's pretty much driven mad with a desire to kill living organisms, which is probably why he's carrying around this enormous cleaver. His profile is very much a big version of the Skorpekh Destroyers. He's got the same movement 8, a boosted weapon skill and ballistic skill of 2+, strength and toughness 6, 6 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 10 and a 3+ save, and he's further protected by a phase shifter which will give him a 4+ invul save on top of that. His rumoured points cost is 130 points, again I'd take those with a pinch of salt, but I suspect that they're right, and he's armed with a ranged weapon in an Enigmatic Annihilator, and for close combat with a Flensing Claw and a Hyperphase Harvester, aka Enormous Necron Cleaver. That Enigmatic Annihilator is an 18-inch range weapon with assault 2d3, strength 6, AP -1 and damage 1, and it does have the blast special rule. It's a bit of a fairly close ranged anti-infantry gizmo really. It'll kill around about 3 guardsmen in total, or do 1 or 2 wounds to space marines, so not bad but only chip damage really. It is quite handy that it's an assault weapon as well though, so it doesn't stop him from advancing towards the enemy if he wants to get some extra distance closer to them, hopefully for a charge the next turn. For close combat he has a Flensing Claw, which is strength 6, AP -1 and damage 1, but you make 2 hit rolls instead of 1 for each attack made by the weapon. So that's typically going to be 8 attacks unless he gets any other buffs from anywhere, so pretty much the best choice for any 1 wound infantry that he's fighting. Otherwise he can attack with that enormous Hyperphase Harvester, which is strength +2, so strength 8, AP -4 and a flat damage of 3. You have to subtract 1 from the hit rolls when making an attack with this weapon though. Profile wise it's not all so dissimilar from a Necron Thunderhammer. Like the standard Skorpekh Destroyers, he has the Hardwired for Destruction special rule, meaning that you reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by this model, both in range and close combat, and he also provides a helpful aura buff called United in Destruction, which means that you reroll wound rolls of 1 for attacks made in friendly Destroyer cult units of the same dynasty, while they're units within 6 inches of the model. Pretty handy that it's all Destroyer cult models, so I presume that means he'll be able to use it on the ranged Destroyers as well as the Skorpekh ones in close combat. Basically though, this does mean that he'll be re-rolling hit and wound rolls of 1 all the time, which really quite amps up his damage output. He'll kill around about 3 intercessors with that Hyperphase Harvester, about 6 guardsmen with the Flensing Claw, or do on average about 7 damage per turn to a toughness 7 vehicle. Overall he seems like a pretty reasonable HQ choice to think about if you are thinking about running some Destroyer units, but I think we'll only start to be able to really put the units together once we know the full Necron Codex details, what all of their other units do, including those Locust Destroyers, and know how all the dynasties work and any new stratagem options we get. I think his stat line seems at least reasonably promising for an advancing Necron battle line, and perhaps he might be able to teleport a unit alongside him across the board with that Veil of Darkness relic that they can get. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure how much we'll see these close combat units used in comparison with Necron's many ranged options. It really is going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Are these guys going to be good, or are they just a little bit too underwhelming for the points? If you've enjoyed the review, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where we'll most certainly be looking over any new rules for Necrons or Space Marines coming out around the turn of the edition. If you've enjoyed the video, then I'd just like to mention that I do have a Patreon page for Auspex Tactics, which is how I can afford to spend quite so much time and effort making these videos. If you have been enjoying regularly, then any support is greatly appreciated. Channel patrons get to see at least 1 new video early per week. There's regular votes to see what sort of videos come next on the channel, and I also run a prize draw each month where the next one will be giving away 3 copies of the Indomitus box. If any of that sounds good, or you'd just like to help out the channel, then the Patreon link is down in the video description below. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.